Alright guys, we are back for another DIY. This time it's the sneaker dress and it's super easy. I'm sure you saw it on Instagram. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to get into is our supplies. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need is a Walmart t-shirt. I got a medium and I wanted it to fit a little bit up top and kind of be loose down below. You want to go ahead and try that shirt on and see where it falls at and measure down to where you're comfortable with where it's at, and keep that measurement for when we get ready to draw out our pattern on our fabric. Alright, so that's the first thing you're going to need is that Walmart t-shirt. Go get it. Alright, the next thing you're going to need is some fabric. 2 to 3 yards of knit fabric. I'm using sweater knit. You want 3 yards if you don't want the seam down the back, but 2 yards will do you just fine. I did one with the seam and without the seam, but get that fabric. Alright, next up you are going to need some scissors. Get your best fabric scissors. Don't use any you cut with paper or anything like that. Alright. Alright, shoestrings, very important, or it wouldn't be a lace-up dress. You need a pair of shoestrings. It really doesn't matter the length. Get your shoestrings. Alright, next thing up, you're going to need something to measure your seam with. You can use a ruler. I'm going to be using my seams, right? I got it from my local Joann's. I'm going to be using the 1 inch on it. That's what you're going to need, but you can use a ruler if you don't have this. Alright, next up, pattern weights. I got mine from Lowe's or Home Depot. You can get those. They're really just washers, and they're really good for holding down your pattern pieces, in our case, the pieces we cut out. Alright, next up, you're going to need a yardstick, and not a ruler in this case, but a yardstick to measure those long measurements that we take from where your t-shirt ends to where you want the desired length. You're also going to need you some chalk, or you can use a friction pen. I got mine from Staples, or you can get it from Office Depot, but make sure you have something to mark on your fabric with. Alright, next up is pens. You'll always need pens. I got plenty of them. Alright, you're also going to need something to cut away all those harsh pennies or those stray threads that you have. I'm going to also use this style design ruler that I have. It's for making the curve that you're going to need at the bottom. You don't have to use this. It is optional, but you will need something for a curve. Alright, next up you're going to need some eyelets. I got these from my local Hobby Lobby. I also have some that I got from Joann's. These are the nickel ones that I got from Hobby Lobby, a nickel color, and I got some gold ones from Joann's, but both are 3/8 inches. You are going to need that. Nothing larger, nothing smaller. Alright, so go run and get those. These are how they look. Alright. Alright, so these are all the tools that you're going to need to make your lace-up t-shirt dress. Make sure that you have everything that you need. Like I said, some things are optional, some things are not, but make sure that you get everything together before you get started. I tell you what I hate more than anything is getting halfway through and realizing got to make a quick trip to the fabric store. So you don't want that. Alright, so get everything ready before you get started, and it looks like we are about to get started. Oh yeah, I forgot, you will need some thread. Always need that. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is get your shirt, and you want to lay it on the side and open it up. Alright, and what we're basically doing is cutting along the side seam. We're going to do that on both sides because what we want to do is get our pattern piece that we're going to use to actually make our lace-up t-shirt dress. Alright, so go ahead and cut, follow the seam line going all the way down the side. What we're going to do, that's why I said you're going to need a ruler, or some type of seam right, or something to measure your seam out, because you're going to add all that seam allowance that you're cutting away back in. But you want to cut all the way up the sleeve like I did. Alright, and I've already opened up one side. You want to turn it over on the other side once you get that done, and do it the exact same way. So once you finish doing the sides, you're going to go ahead and work on your arms. Now you want to make sure you notate where your front is, and you can do that by, of course, looking at the V-neck, but I left my sticker on mine. But you need to know or identify your front and your back, because when you begin cutting your sleeve, you're going to have to make some snips on your front and your back. Alright, and that's going to help that when you lay it out, you will have those snips to transfer onto your fabric piece, and you can line it back up once you get started. so as you cut around, stay on the seam, do not cut off. You don't want to mess up your measurements, and go ahead and make you 2 snips on both sides so that you know where your front is, and then you just continue on cutting around. So we're going to cut up a little bit more and make us another snip once we get a little bit more there. Right, and go ahead and make those cuts in that. And then once you make those 2 cuts, you want to just go ahead and continue on around. And again, you're going to you're doing that so that you can line up your pieces once you put them onto the fabric, or once you cut them out on the fabric. So just continue cutting on around as you go, taking your time and making sure that you stay on that seam. Once you get to that side seam, or the shoulder seam, you want to make you another snip, and that's just going to tell you where to line up your shoulder seam with your sleeve, and then you just continue on cutting around. All right, you may want to come over to the other side and cut from the other side once you get halfway there. But now you're cutting on your back piece, so you want to make sure that as you're cutting on your back piece, you make you a little snip on both sides on that side also. All right, so on the front piece, you're going to have 2 snips, and once you get up far enough on that back sleeve, you want to make you 1 snip. Don't make 2 snips, because then you won't know the front from the back. But go ahead and cut that on around once you make those 2 snips, and you'll be good. You want to do the exact same thing to your other piece so that you have 2 sleeve pieces, or you don't really even have to do that because one you can just trace and cut you 2. All right, so once you finish doing this, then you want to continue cutting out the other pieces like you have. So once we finish and you spread that out, you can see that you're going to have your 2 snips on the front to notate where the front is, and then you're going to have your 1 snip on the back side of the sleeve, and then you got your snip up at the top. All right, so that's going to make it super easy so we can lay out our pieces. All right, so once you finish cutting out your arm piece, then you just want to get ready to cut out your band piece. So start at your shoulder sleeve and cut all the way up to the beginning of your band. You don't want to cut through your band because you don't want it to fall off. You don't want to cut it in half. All right, so you may want to get you some smaller scissors and start cutting that way. All right, so I'm just going to take my time and go up my shoulder seam and cut all the way till I get to the beginning of my band. Make sure you take your time. All right, and then once you get to that shoulder seam, you want to go ahead and cut all the way as far as you can to the beginning of the shoulder seam, and then start cutting around on the outside of the shoulder seam. All right, take your time on this part again, because you don't want to cut through your band on accident, and you don't want to mess up your pattern for your front or for your back. All right, so just go ahead and get all that done, and once you get finished, then you want to also start on the other side and cut the back out around the band also. Alright, I got my band all cut out, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting out that other seam. Alright, so now we have our band, and what we want to do is go all the way around our band and cut off that leftover seam. I did tell you to make sure you stay close to the seam and not cut it off. So if you did not cut that seam off, now you want to go back and cut off that seam so that you can open it up and have your pattern piece. So take your time. Use your scissors. I'm using my smaller scissors so that I can get in there and cut it out with no problem. And you just want to go in and cut all the way around and get that seam off. once you get that seam cut off, go ahead and open up your band and go ahead and clean it up, because you're probably going to have a lot of scraggly edges, but you don't want to cut into the actual band. You just want to go and clean up all the edges that you have. All right, and then at the very corner, you want to open that up and cut diagonal so that you can get that piece apart to make your band. All right, and when you fold it out, you'll notice it's just a regular square piece, all right, that they've cut. So we've finished our band. We have our band piece open. All right, and so now we have all the pieces that we're going to need for our to do our laced up dress. We have our back piece, and we have our front piece, and we also have our arm piece. All right, guys, so the first piece that we are going to be working with is our front piece. All right, and what you're going to need for this front piece is something to measure out your seam, and I'm using my seam right, or you can use a ruler. All right, and what you want to do is make sure that you use your iron and lay everything nice and flat and line up everything when you do your fold. All right, because you're going to be cutting this on the fold, so you want to fold that piece in half and use your iron to iron out everything and get it nice and flat. All right, and like I said, your seam right, which I purchased from my local Joann's. It has a lot of different seam allowances on it, or you can use your ruler. I'm going to use it to do to put back in my seam allowance. So I'm going to do it on my arm as well as my shoulder. I'm going to do a 5/8 inch seam, and I'm going to mark that either using my chalk, or I'm going to use my handy dandy pen that I got from my local Staples. All right, so what you're going to do, like I said, is do 5/8 inch on everything but the side. All right, so you just want to take your time and go ahead and trace all the way around using whatever your tool you are, but make sure that you only do 5/8 inch seam going all the way around. All right, and take your time going all the way up, connect your corners, and take your time on it. All right, you'll notice here that I have go ahead and done 5/8 inch going all the way around on my sleeve. I have also done it on my arm shoulder piece as well as on my V piece. All right, so take your time, like I said, and do that 5/8 inch. Now what you're going to do is do a 1 inch on the outside of your shirt. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is when you finish, you want to make sure you did a 5/8 inch on the V part of your shirt, as well as the sleeve, and I'm going around on the arm. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is measure the length going down that's comfortable for you to wear your t-shirt dress. All right, and I'm going to mark that, and you did that, remember, when you tried it on earlier. Next, you want to measure the width of your t-shirt, including the 1 inch seam allowance. All right, because you're going to transfer that marking down to the very bottom. All right, so start from where you made your length measurement and just measure across the width of your shirt to match the upper part of the pattern that we have up there. All right, so take your time. Go ahead and make a really good mark going all the way across. All right. All right, once we make that width line, then we want to go ahead and make the length line, and we just connect from the 1 inch out of that pattern piece all the way down to the width line that we made, the width of our shirt. All right, and make sure you draw you a nice line. Now you notice that you have a point. All right, so what you want to do next is take your ruler and measure in about 1.5 inches from the point. All right, and go ahead and connect, put your put your curve at that point that you made, and go ahead and connect those two length line and width lines just like you see here. All right. All right, now you're going to do the same exact thing to your back piece as you did to your front piece. 5/8 inch around the arm and 5/8 inch around the neck, and 1 inch on the side. And you then also, if you decided to save some fabric and not do it on the fold, then you also want to make sure you do your 5/8 inch where the fold would normally be. Okay, so go ahead and do that in the exact same manner as you did your front piece, and then we'll get to the bottom piece in just a second. Alright, so once you finish doing the top portion, doing out all your seam allowance, you want to do the same thing. Start from your line, which is 5/8 inch out from your shirt. If you did it on the fold, if you did not do it on the folded edge, if you did do it on the folded edge, you do the same thing. Just measure down your desired length and mark. Alright, and then what you want to do is do the exact same thing out from the 1 inch on the other side. Alright, and mark down. Now what we're going to do is again measure the bottom portion of our shirt to make sure that it lines up with the bottom portion that we're going to mark. We want to make sure those are the same length, and we just want to connect the dots going all the way across. Alright, soon as you finish that, do the exact same thing again as before. Measure 1.5 inch up and make your mark. Now you can either do this, or what I did was put the first part of my shirt down that I'd already cut out, line up all of my lines, and then use the guide that I'd already made so that I can make sure that both sides were exactly the same. So you probably want to do it that way, is lay down and make sure both are exactly the same and cut. Alright, now once you finish cutting, you do want to, if you didn't already, make your notches for your front and your back pieces, and be sure to follow the 2 notches on the front and the 1 notch on the back, and that's going to help you line up your arm pieces or your sleeve pieces to connect to your front and back. Alright, we are almost done. Do the same thing on your sleeve. 5/8 inch seam allowance going all the way around. Take your time. Alright, and then once you're finished doing that 5/8 inch seam allowance, then go ahead and just cut it out following your lines that you drafted. So make sure you cut your snips so you know your front from your back on your sleeves, and this is how your piece should look. Alright, so once we finish with our arm pieces, we're going to move on to our neck band pieces. Alright, so you want to do the exact same thing that you've been doing on all your other pieces. You want to make sure that you mark out 5/8 inch. Now on this band piece, you do want to make sure you iron it out. Take the steam setting off when you iron it out so that it doesn't roll up on you. But go ahead and iron that out before you lay it down and start marking that 5/8 inch on that. Alright, once we get that done, of course you want to go ahead and cut it out, and this is how your pieces should look. Alright, so we have our neckband piece that we've already cut out, and you want to make sure again you iron that out, because this is how it rolls up on you if you don't. But iron that out before you go ahead and mark that 5/8 inch seam so you get the right seam. But you have your arm piece, and we have our band piece, and we have our front and back pieces. We're going to work with those pieces first, so go ahead and put your arm piece and your band piece away for now, and let's get started working on that back piece. All right, for that back piece, what you want to do is go ahead and pull those two pieces apart. And if you cut your back piece on the fold, then you don't have to worry about this. You can omit this step and move on to the next step. However, if you did not, then you do want to go ahead and attach those two pieces. So you want to put right sides together. Take your time, make sure you line those up nice and neat, and then you want to go ahead and pin those pieces together. Alright, so once we get those two pieces pinned together, then what we want to do is take our two pieces to the sewing machine. You can do one of two things. You can either serge your ends on a 5/8 or you can stitch them on a 5/8. What I decided to do is go ahead and serge mine on the 5/8, and that just makes it a little bit neater on the inside. Alright, so the next step that we need to do is take this to the ironing board and iron down our seams. You always want to iron down every seam every time you sew it together. That way you'll go ahead and you won't have a finished garment with some seams ironed and some seams not. All right, so make sure when you do take it to the ironing board that you iron it on the front and then turn it over and iron it on the back. That way you'll make sure that you get a nice pressed seam. All right, so let's go ahead and iron that down. Take your time while you're ironing it down, and I'll pick one side or the other to iron your seam too. Alright, so once you finish ironing it, you want to go ahead and put those right sides together, front and back pieces. Take your time. You want to go ahead and pin those down, and make sure that you do this step, because I guess, one beginner thing I can say is that when I first started sewing, I didn't think this step was necessary, but it is, so that your pieces do not slide when you take them to the sewing machine. Alright, so once you get one side pinned down, what you want to go ahead and do now is work on how far your split is going to go up on the side. So what I decided was to do about 4 inches going up. All right, so I went from the corner, not from the bottom, and I marked 4 inches up, as you see here. Once you make that mark, then you want to go ahead and pin that mark so that you can take it to your sewing machine and know where to stop at. All right, so we do the exact same thing on the other side. Go ahead and pin going all the way down, and then once you finish pinning, be sure to mark out the 4 inches or however long you want your split to go up on the side. One other thing that you may want to do is, once you finish marking both sides, go ahead and line those two sides up together to make sure that they're even. All right, and that way you won't have one split higher than the other on the other side. Once you have finished pinning everything, like I said, line everything up, make sure everything is even, make sure that your slits are even, and what you're going to do now is sew a 1-inch seam on your sides. All right, and you normally would do a 5/8 inch seam, but this time you're going to do a 1-inch seam. The reason we're doing this 1-inch seam is to help cover our grommets when we put them in on where the split is. All right, so what I suggest doing is taking your seam right or your ruler and marking out your 1-inch, because my sewing machine, I don't know about yours, but my sewing machine does not have a 1-inch mark on it. So to keep from playing guesswork, I want to go ahead and mark it out, and you can see here that I did go ahead and mark that 1-inch seam out before I took it to the sewing machine. All right, once you get all that done, go ahead and take it to the sewing machine, and this is how it's going to look when you bring it back from the sewing machine. All right, you have sewn in 1 inch, and that gives you enough seam allowance that you can cover up your grommets. Now, unlike I told you to do on your back seam, if you did your back seam, I did tell you to use your serger if you had it. Don't do it on this, all right, because you're going to need those flaps. And of course, go ahead and iron down all of your seams so that they lay nice and flat, and that's going to help again cover up that grommet. All right, you're going to do the same thing on the other side, iron that down. All right, our next step, we're moving along, guys, is to go ahead and sew those shoulder seams together. So you see here, I've already pinned them down, and I'm going to go ahead and take it to the sewing machine and do a 5/8 inch on this. And you can see here that these I did go ahead and serge together. All right, and one thing you also want to do is when you finish serging yours or sewing yours together, do a stay stitch going all the way around your collar. That's going to keep it from stretching, all right, because this is knit that you're working with, and knit will stretch. So to keep that from stretching and to keep you from not having, having one piece bigger than the other when you sew your band together, go ahead and make sure you do that stay stitch. And as always, since we did go ahead and seam those together, you want to go ahead and iron down your seams so that they lay nice and flat. Do that on both your right and your left sleeve. Alright guys, moving right along, and now it's time to work on our sleeve. We're going to get our sleeve prepared to attach to our shirt, but for now we're going to move our shirt to the side. Alright, let's grab our first piece, and what we're going to do, of course, is right sides together, and we're going to sew the seam of that. Make sure you take your time and you pin both of your pieces before you begin sewing so that you don't have to worry about anything slipping. All right, and once you finish that, you are going to go ahead and take it to the sewing machine and do a 5/8 inch seam on both of those pieces. All right, be sure to take your time while you're sewing and remove your pins as you go. All right, and once we finish that, we can attach it to our shirt. All right, so we're back from the sewing machine, and what we're going to do is press down those seams. I did go ahead and serge my underarm seam to keep it nice and clean so I don't have anything on the inside. And you are going to go ahead and just take it and press it down. I am using my ham here, or no, I take that back. That's my sleeve ham that I'm using to make sure that I can get in those sleeves and press down. Now it's time to attach our sleeve. So you are going to first attach your underarm seam. Make sure that you have right sides together, and guys, this is where all those snips that we created from the beginning are going to come into play. So attach your underarm sleeve and go ahead and pin both of those together. Then match up your shoulder seam with the notch that you checked down at the top of your sleeve. Match those together and pin that. All right, and once you do both of those, then you can just go ahead and match up your other your other notches that you made on your front part of your sleeve and the back part of your sleeve. Here's what it should look like once you finish. All right, you want to do that on your other sleeve also. Be sure to first match up your underarm sleeve and then your notches at the top with your side seam. Make sure you match those up, and when you finish, here's what everything looks like. All right, I have my sleeves attached, and I took my time and made sure that everything was taken care of, as well as did my stay stitch going around my collar so that I didn't have to worry about that stretching. All right guys, so now it's time to add our band. All right, so what we want to do is grab our band and we want to do wrong sides together this time. And before we do anything, we want to make sure we line up our edges so that we can go ahead and press. And then that way it'll make it easier to pin together. We won't have to worry about keeping all these pieces together, and then we can go ahead and manage it a little bit. All right, so once you finish putting everything together and lining all the sides up, then you want to go ahead and press and get that pressed down. Give it a nice hard press. So put a little pressure on your iron when you're pressing, and then flip it on the other side. Make sure that all of your edges are lined up on that side also, and do the same thing. Go ahead and give it a hard press. Alright, so once you finish giving it a hard press, you're going to fold it on the and meet right size, measure 1 inch up from the side, and then connect that on both sides. Alright, so you're going to make essentially a triangle. You're going to measure 1 inch up from the end and make a mark, and then you're going to connect those from the corners. And when you finish, you should have a triangle like this. Make sure that you have your right sides together when it comes to this. Alright, now you're going to go ahead and pin everything down so it doesn't move when you take it to the ironing board, and you're going to essentially follow that the triangle that you've just created. Make sure that you follow it, pivot when you get to the corner, and then this is how it's going to look when you bring it back. Alright, so you can kind of see how it's pretty much forming. Alright, and what I like to do during this time is press everything out. Alright, so I kind of open it up, push everything down together like you see, and then take my iron and press over, give it a nice press, and make sure it's laying nice and flat. That's going to make it a lot easier to connect to your band when you get ready to. Now, if you want to make things easier, at this point you can take it back and go ahead and do a basting stitch all around to hold all of your fabric together. That's optional. But what I do is fold the neckband in half and make a snip at the very back. I do this so that I know what my center back is and my center front is before we connect. Alright, so now it's time to connect. Take your first point and match it up with the V point in your shirt or in your t-shirt dress. Alright, and then you want to take your snips that you did for your center back and match them up with your center back and go ahead and pin that. Alright, and then you just want to go around the rest of your collar and line it up and pin. Now you are going to have to slightly stretch this collar as you're sewing so that it has a nice snug. If not, it'll be kind of loose and you don't want that. Alright, so make sure that you put some pins in it, but you will have to stretch your band to make it fit a little bit snugger. Alright, and this is how it should look once you got it all pinned up. Alright, and then now we're going to take it to the sewing machine. So once you get it to the sewing machine, I suggest starting at the point. Go ahead and get that out of the way. That used to always be the toughest part for me when I'm doing bands, is the point. Alright, and make sure you line your needle up on your 5/8 inch and just slowly stitch, pulling your pins out as you go and slightly stretching your band as you go. Alright, be sure as you go to make sure that your pieces stay lined up. That's the reason for the pins. Alright, and you stretch your band as you go, but take your time and go all the way around the band of your collar. Alright, honey bunches of oats, we are done with our collar. I ended at the point, and I am going to show you what it looks like when you finish. Now you might have a little bit of puckling just from the pulling of the band, but what you're going to do, that's going to solve itself once you take it to the ironing board and press down. But this is pretty much how your band should look once it's attached. Alright, so what you're going to do is go ahead now, take it to the ironing board, press going all the way around, press your the seam allowance towards your t-shirt. Alright, and then what you want to do is come back to the come back to the sewing machine, start at your point, and you're going to do a top stitch going all the way around. You want to sew on the side of your t-shirt, not on the band. Stay very, very close to your seam line, and then just follow the seam going all the way around. Make sure you sew on the t-shirt and not on the band. Also, make sure you take your time. Alright, so we are coming on around to where we originally began at our point, and when we finish, this is how it should look. Alright, make sure when you're doing this you take your time and get as close to that original seam as you can, but don't sew on top of it. Alright, so this is how it should look once you've ironed everything down and finished doing your neck binding and you've done the top stitching going all the way around. Alright, so at this point, if you just want to do a regular basic t-shirt dress and you don't want to do the lace-up part, then go ahead and just hem your sleeves on both sides, and you can do a 5/8 inch hem on both sides and do the bottom portion hem of your t-shirt dress, and you can finish there. Alright, but if you don't want to finish there and you want to do the lace-up part, then you're going to need 4 8-inch by 1-inch strips of interfacing. And what you're going to do is go ahead and turn over your dress on the inside and get it lined up nice and neat. You want to go ahead and find where your split begins at, because that's going to help line up your interfacing. Alright, so the first strip, you want to go ahead and pull back that hem that you made. Alright, and you want to line it up with where your split begins, and that's going to help on the other side also. So get that nice and straight, and you want to do the exact same thing on the other side. Make sure you line it up, make sure both pieces are even, and the best way to do that, like I said, is with lining them up at the base of, or beginning of your split, just like this. Alright, so what we're going to do now is go ahead and iron it down. Take your time, make sure you apply pressure to the ironing so that you can get a nice bun for your interfacing. You want to do that on one side, and then go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. Again, be sure to line it up nice and straight so that both parts are even. And iron that on up. Alright, once you get done, this is how both pieces should look, sealed down, and you want to do the exact same thing on the other side. And when you finish, this is how they should look. Alright, time to grab those grommets and grab your ruler. Alright, so step 1, you want to go ahead and fold back your flap so that it's not in the way when you're doing all your measuring to put down your grommets. Alright, just fold it under, pin it, and get it out of the way. Alright, so once you get that out of the way, the next thing you're going to do is draw a line in the middle of your interfacing. Alright, make sure that you get that line so you can actually see it really good, and you want to make sure you draw it in the middle of the interfacing. Next, you want to measure 1 inch up from the bottom of that interfacing, and make sure you stay on that middle line and make a mark, and then put your grommet in the middle of that mark, or put that mark in the center of your grommet. Then measure up another inch and make another mark. Alright, and make that mark, and then go ahead and put that grommet on the line, and make that dot, put that dot in the middle of the grommet. Repeat the steps 2 more times. Measure from the grommet, make a 1 inch mark, and put your grommet. Measure from the next grommet, make a 1 inch mark, and go ahead and put that last grommet. Alright, and after you do that, you want to go ahead and line up everything and make sure everything is nice and neat and you have your lines even, and then you want to do it on the other side. Now the easiest way to do that is the exact same thing. Draw that line, and then you can use the dots from the other side to actually put your grommets in. Once you get all those dots in, go ahead and lay your grommets down and make sure that everything's going to look nice and even when you finish. All right, so you're going to make a cross snip in your fabric, and don't cut it too large. And then you're going to take your grommets. You should have two pieces, a raised side and a flat side. You're going to take that raised side and push it through the cross snip that you just made. All right, and then take the flat piece and put that over the back side of it. All right, so that should be on the wrong side. Now I have a grommet tool. And you can also use the tools that come with your grommet set, but I like to kind of use my tool because it doesn't damage the grommet and you don't have to worry about hammering things in and being really loud. And this tool is standard to a 3/8 inch grommet. So put the grommet tool over the grommet, put the plastic side on the back side, and you're just going to do a nice firm push. All right, and then when you finish, easy as pie. That's how it looked. All right, so this is how it should look once you finished all of them. I'll put the information for the tool that I use below. All right, so the next thing that we have left to do is go ahead and do the hems of our dress, and then we do the hems of our sleeves, and guys, we will pretty much be done. Our hem at the bottom. What I've already done and what you need to go ahead and do is either use your ruler, or if you have a seam right, mark up 1 inch from your raw edge. All right, and that's what I did. And then what we're going to do is turn it on the wrong side, and we're going to basically ease in our fabric. All right, because you're going to have a curve on the corners, and you're going to have to ease that in with the iron. All right, so you're basically going to turn in. Now you can either turn in and pin, but I really wouldn't suggest pinning because you are going to have to use your iron and you don't want to run over your pins. So basically what I did was just turned in just a little bit, and then I took my iron and eased that in by ironing it down flat. All right, and you basically want to go all the way around that hem, turning it in on your markings to make sure that you got a nice even mark, and then press. All right, and you can see basically how that side looks, and you're going to basically do the exact same thing to the other side. Now what you want to do is, so that your fabric doesn't come back like mine was, is go ahead and take you some pins and pin down what you have already pressed down. Make sure to ease in that fabric and get it laid down nice and flat so that you don't have any troubles when we do the hems. All right, and do the very do the very same thing to the other side. Make sure you get you a nice even press. Straighten your fabric out. And you want to press going all the way around with your iron. Be sure to take your time on this part, guys. All right, now you want to go in and pin everything so that everything is nice and neat and laid flat before you take it to the iron. All right, now I have everything pinned down, and what I've done is turn it on my wrong side. All right, but you can see here that I have everything eased in. So what we want to do is, just like we ironed it on the wrong side, we do want to go ahead and iron it nice and flat on the right side. Now you want to you want to remove a few pins as you go. All right, that way you don't have to worry about it unrolling on you. All right, so go ahead and do that. I don't know about you, but my fabric is a knit sweater knit, and so it rolls at the end. All right, so I just did a few pins at a time, took them out, and then pressed, and you just go all the way around that hem doing that. Make sure you straighten out your hem as you go so that it's laying nice and flat, and repress over any parts that you need to get that hem laying nice and flat. When you finish, you should have a nice curved edge on both sides like you see here, and then you want to go back and repin all of the pressing that you just did. All right, now take it to the iron, start at the corner inside the grommet, and go all the way around on the hem with a stitch. All right, and I showed you here how I did that on my piece that I already finished. Once I finished that, I went back with my scissors and I cut very, very close to my hem line, or to my stitch line, and then went back and repressed so that I had a nice flat curved edge. All right, you're going to do that on the other side. All right, so this is how it looks at the very end when you finish doing your hem, and you finish, make sure you go all the way at the very edge like I said. All right, so this is one side. This is my finished side, and like you saw, I have gone ahead and cut away all of my excess fabric. All right, so to do that, what you want to do is make a snip right below where your grommets are. All right, and then just cut all of that excess fabric that you eased in, going all the way around the hem. Cut it very, very close to your stitch edge. All right, take your time doing this and be sure not to cut your seam. Alright, so to do your hem on your sleeve, you can either do one or two ways. You can turn up your fabric and do a 5/8 inch seam going all the way around, or you can do a rolled hem. Alright, but either one that you do, you want to go ahead and make sure you take your time, take it to the sewing machine, and go all the way around. Now, once you finish, alright, this is what I did, and I decided to go ahead and do a rolled hem so that I had no unfinished edges on the inside, and I just go ahead and press it going down so that that hem lays nice and flat. Alright, I did that on both sides. Alright, so once you finish with the hem, you are pretty much done. All you have left to do is do the accessory work and put in your shoestrings. Now, you can get any size shoestrings that you want. I'm not sure. I believe these are 48-inch shoestrings. I'm not absolutely sure, but you can get whatever size you want. What I really have found is that the best ones are the child shoelaces because they're a little bit smaller, rather a little bit shorter, and they don't hang as long. But what I want to show you here is two different ways that you can string up this sneaker skirt just to make it fun. All right, so the first way is doing it from the top to the bottom and having your tie at the very bottom, and I'm showing you basically how to do that here. All right, and here's how it looks when you lace it from the top to the bottom, and you see it's got go from one it scratched the heck out of me. All right, so I learned from that before I did this tutorial for you guys, and that's why we did the extra seam allowance and left that in so that it will protect your skin from the grommet. Believe me, it works. All right, so what we're doing here is just finishing up now, going ahead and lacing that in from the bottom to the top now so that you have just a little bit of different look. All right, and in addition to this, you can have your shoestrings laying. You don't even have to tie them if you don't want to. You can just have them hanging low. You can do whatever you want to. That's what makes this sneaker skirt so fun, because just like with shoes, you can tie the laces many different ways, and you can do it with here. But here is how the bottom to top look looks. Guys, we are done. All right, I showed you how to make your sneaker skirt. I hope that you were able to get yours done just like mine. I would love to see your creation, so if you do any, please tag me on Instagram. All right, and I will leave all of the details below. Don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, thanks for watching.